I'm going to walk you through the steps of texture painting. And so we'll use our skull that we already have. Now the first thing that we want to do, you probably want to put this in render mode, or you can put it in look dev is also good, and maybe a little faster. So I'm going to put it in look dev. And I'm going to go over to the texture paint workspace, and that'll give me the windows that I need. So we have two windows. We have here our kind of wrapped texture. It doesn't look like much right now, but we're going to change that a bit. And then we have our object here, of course. Notice that it is purple. So we have to establish the textures that we're going to use for this. One thing first, though, I'm going to go over to my modifiers. And you'll see that there are two modifiers on this currently. There's a subdivision surface. I'm going to leave that one. There's also a mirror modifier, and that is what is making this skull kind of whole. So that one I'm going to apply. And I'll leave the subdivision surface. And then I'm going to go back to the kind of first section here, the active tool and workspace settings. And here's where you're going to establish your textures. So notice that you have two materials on here. You have the black, and that is currently set to the eyes and the nose. And then you have the white, and that's set to everything else. So we're going to do kind of one for each. We can paint on that. Now, one thing first that I'm going to do, I'm going to change this texture paint up here quickly to edit mode. I'm going to select everything. So press A. And then what I want to do is I'm going to press U. And that's going to give me this UV mapping menu. And I want to do, this is probably the easiest thing to do, is the Smart UV Project. So I'll click on that. And the only thing I'm going to change here is the island margin. And what that's going to do is going to put some space in between the different sections. So I'm going to hit OK. And now you see everything has been sort of separated. And it'll make a little more sense when we start painting this. So I'm going to go to now back to the texture paint. And again, I'm going to start with, well, let's start with this black material. Again, that's on the eyes. What we have to do is create a texture. Right now it says no textures. So I'm going to hit plus, and I'm going to add a base color. And here's the name of this texture. I'm just going to add eye. I'll shorten it a little bit. We'll call this eye base color. The resolution here, I'm going to double this just so we can get a little more detail. So I'll put 2048 for the width and the height. And I'm going to leave the color as black. And now you see it up here. And I will do the same thing for the second material. I'm going to add here where it says no textures. I'll add a base color, and I'll just call this one skull base color, and you'll see it's already the same resolution. So all I have to do is hit OK. Okay, so let's try this out. I'm going to start on the skull base color, and I'll just start with the brush. And you have your color up here, so you can change it. So I'll just start with the black. You also have your radius, that's the size of your brush. Notice that circle. So if I wanted that bigger, I could take that up. I could also make it smaller, like that. A good shortcut on your keyboard, you have bracket keys. So the left bracket next to P is going to be a smaller brush, and the right bracket is going to be a bigger brush. So I like that. You do also have strength here. For the purposes of this, I'm just going to max that out, and then I can start to paint. So one thing that you can do is you can paint either directly on the skull, or you can go over here. Now we don't see anything here yet. So what we need to do is load in our textures that we just made. So I'm going to go to this menu here, and you have again your eye base color and your skull base color. So I'll go to skull base color, and then I'll zoom back out, and you'll see it's all white. And if I continue to paint, we should see that change. There you see those dots. Now, it would be really hard for me to take this and do this to both sides. So down here at the bottom, we can turn on symmetry. And since our y-axis is here, that's the axis we want to mirror this on. So now whenever I do something on the other one side, it should also appear on the other side. And that's going to make this way easier. And so now you can take your brush and you can make some designs. This is going to obviously be a little tricky drawing with a mouse, but again, this is going to be a small object in your scene, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Again, we can change color. So let's get a red. Just a heads up, here you have your main spectrum, and then here you have your value. So that's how you pick the kind of color you want. And you can just kind of, freelance. You have some other tools here. You can experiment with them. And obviously, if you don't want to keep something, you can cover it up. So I'll go back to white, and well, that's a little lighter. So you can try to match somehow. There is an eyedropper somewhere to match your, and we'll figure that out later. But that's pretty much it. Let me just do one quick thing. I'm going to switch over to the other material. And I'll paint on that. Now again, this is the other one, so if you want, you can switch over to the eye base color. And you'll see those getting painted on. And that's going to be anything that's in those black areas. And that's pretty much an introduction to texture painting. Now, the one thing that we want to do after this is we need to save these images. Otherwise, it won't stay on our object. So first thing I want to do, I'm going to go to image over here on the left side, and I want to click on save all images. That's going to save these textures as they are, so that when you reopen it, it will be there. The other thing that you want to do is probably, I don't want to save this over the original, just in case I want to keep that original. So I am going to save as, and I'll call this something else. So we'll skull paint dot blend. I'll save. And then just to kind of make sure all of our textures are there, I am going to, again, go to File, go to External Data, and pack all into .blend. That's, again, just to kind of make sure we have all our images on here. We'll save it one more time. Now you should be able to take this, put it into your scene.